Each year, it comes and goes in the blink of an eye, and while, yeah, the same can be said about something like a Formula 1 car, the same as well can be said for the Penny Arcade Expo, or most commonly known as PAX Australia, a 3-day convention with brilliant and up-and-coming indie games, gaming accessories like keyboards, monitors, chairs, desks, and even if video games aren't overly your thing, well then there's plenty of board games, miniatures to paint, cards to slap down on the table, and more. October 11th to 13th in Melbourne this year was PAX Australia, the 3-day event where like-minded gamers, friends, family all come under the one roof to catch up, to play games, to roll some dice, to paint some minis and more, and just like last year, PAX was a fantastic event that had a couple of indie games that surprised me, as well as also it had me return to some games that I forgot released earlier this year. Unlike the Australian event Supernova, where that convention more so acts like a giant shopping experience, PAX acts more like a convention where there is literally something for everyone, and while there wasn't a giant Nintendo booth like there was last year or overly new games to play, I kinda welcomed it because it had me explore more, try out more, but well, what was there? A few game studios did actually have a decent footprint at PAX, with Ubisoft Australia having a Star Wars Outlaws demo section, where walking around for 3 days I heard a fair few people change their tone on Outlaws after playing it. Seeing kids stand in a line saying it looked like crap, only to have them walk away from the booth saying, actually I wouldn't mind playing more of that. But also, there were some demos of, I think, a bit of a sleeper hit release this year of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown with its new DLC, and after my nephew tried it out, it kind of reminded me to go back to it and check out the new DLC. But there was also Sonic, more so say Shadow Generations, which also caught my attention, but one of the larger titles, if you will, that immediately felt like I could stand there all day and play it was 2 Point Museum, which, well, if you've played 2 Point Campus or 2 Point Hospital, you already know what you're in for, but if you've not played that, it is a cozy museum management game, and I think that might be one of the few games that Mrs. Dudi might actually enjoy. But when it comes to indie games, there was a game called 420 Blazon, a game so visually loud, you'd probably need to put on sunglasses to play it. But the story premise, if you will, is the world's memes have been stolen by the Illuminati, and you set out to free the memes for the people. And honestly, this game was so loud and vibrant and impressive, the actual Victorian police came to PAX and played it. But I also found a game called Me, You and Kaiju, another upcoming indie game, which is a 4-on-1 kaiju shooter, where 4 players control the military like helicopters and tanks, and they try to take out a kaiju, while the other player is playing as the kaiju in VR attacking the military. It is pretty straightforward, but it also looks like it'll be a load of fun. Now, as for what else PAX had as well, half of the floor is dedicated to board games, card games, and general tabletop games. There was a miniature painting area where anyone could just line up and paint their first miniature, and there were huge lines just to do this. Magic the Gathering had their own booth promoting the release of Duskmourn, which, as you might know from my previous video, I think is also a really good release, but there was also heaps of board games, demos for new games, and just general fun vibes around the board game section, with loads of tired attendees going to the board game section just to hire out a game and just sit down and play with friends and relax. And Pluto's Minis had a great setup with models to buy and a live paint podcast taking place throughout the entire weekend. Outside of the main hall though, there were a few setups where Cult of the Lamb had 2 actual real-life weddings in this custom little Cult of the Lamb style church. Bethesda had some photo boards set up, and I gotta say, they had the best pin of PAX with a Doom Dark Ages spinning shield pin. They also had a Elder Scrolls Tavern where I spent an unhealthy amount of time eating an unhealthy amount of calzones. Bethesda also had a Fallout 76 sort of camp area, which was really cool, where you could actually take a photo and print out your own Vault-Tec ID, which, yep, I still got mine. But without having any sort of new game releases, was there any reason to go to PAX this year? Or maybe if there's no future game releases for future PAXs, is there a reason to go? I say yes. And I felt like by not having a new release in the hall, at least for this year's PAX, it allowed people to try out games they might not normally look at, like 2 Point Museum or Shadow Generations for me, for example, because you're not waiting in line to play the new release game that hasn't released yet, you're actually exploring and spending more time walking around. But should you check out PAX next year if you get the chance? Well, I'm all for them. Panels are a great way to hang out, make some new mates, take part in some trivia, which my friend Zombie Loves Bacon did, and learn some new skills or even learn about the upcoming releases of games. This year, I was a guest on a panel for the first time, and I had a blast. Nervous, but I had a blast. And I also got some really great questions from that too. You'll not only have a chance to play games that might not have made it onto your radar in general, but it's also a really cool chance to take a look at some indie titles. There are also racing simulators that will really test your skills, especially if this simulator moves and kicks around as you drive. The tabletop area will introduce you to alternative games, especially alternative mini-games to Warhammer, or even alternative 3D prints to use in Warhammer or Dungeons & Dragons and more. But, well, if you've ever been on the fence about attending a PAX, I personally highly recommend it. The venue is great, the games, the tabletop area, the atmosphere, the attendees, it's all pretty damn good. Everyone there that I ran into was super friendly and super lovely, and everyone's there for the one reason, it's gaming. But whether you were at PAX this year or next year will be your first PAX, always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.